There are UFO stories, and then there are nights when an entire state looks up and realizes it may not control what it is seeing. Brazil, May 19th, 1986. Not one light, not one witness, not one rumor carried forward by time, but multiple objects, multiple states, multiple radar detections, and fighter jets launched into the dark. This was not just a sighting, this was a system response. Welcome back to UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm your host, Matt Tones. Please subscribe and share our episode. It really is a massive help. Thank you. Today's episode is titled Brazil's Official UFO Night, when a national air defense system reacted to the unknown, and takes us to Brazil and to what may be one of the most important government-documented UAP cases anywhere in the world. Not because it proves extraterrestrial origin, not because it produced wreckage or disclosure, but because on one night in May 1986, the Brazilian state did something that almost no other government has publicly admitted in such clear terms. It treated the unknown in the sky as a real-time air defense problem. This case is known as Official UFO Night in Brazil. And the reason that title matters is simple. This was not just a few witnesses on the ground. This was not just folklore years later. This was multiple witnesses, multiple radar contacts, fighter scrambles, and later public acknowledgement by the Air Force itself. Let's begin with what is most solid. According to the Brazilian government's own account, on May 19, 1986, 21 unidentified flying objects were sighted over Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Goiás. I'm so sorry if I pronounced any of that wrong. The same official summary says the objects were seen by civilian and military witnesses, detected by Brazilian Air Force radar systems, and that 5 fighter jets were activated by the Air Defense Operations Center to intercept them. That is the first anchor point of the story. Not Brazil confirmed aliens, not Brazil was invaded by extraterrestrials, but Brazil officially acknowledged a multi-object, radar-backed aerial event serious enough to trigger interceptor response. Now, once you move beyond the headline, the event gets even more interesting. Contemporary and later reporting describes the incident, beginning with observations near São José dos Campos, where bright lights were seen in the sky and where airport and defense systems begin registering anomalous contacts. One of the most notable witnesses that night was Osiris Silva, founder of Embraer, who reported seeing bright red lights and attempted to approach them in flight. As the incident widened, air bases including Santa Cruz and Anápolis were placed on alert. Then came the military response. Aircraft were launched. Pilots attempted intercepts. Radar operators tracked objects moving in ways that were difficult to reconcile with ordinary traffic. One pilot reportedly closed to within a couple of miles of a target before it accelerated away. Other contacts were described as appearing, disappearing, changing speed, and some accounts maneuvering in formation. The declassified Brazilian Air Force report, as summarized in later public reporting, described characteristics including hovering, rapid acceleration and deceleration, changes in altitude, and transitions from subsonic to supersonic velocities. Now, that language is important because that is not how government usually talk about solved cases, but we also need discipline here. Much of the more dramatic detail in circulation comes from later summaries, media retellings, and documentaries. The strongest official baseline remains what the Brazilian government itself says publicly. The event involved multiple witnesses, radar detections, and fighter activation, and it remains one of Brazil's most famous unsolved UFO incidents. That gives us the first intelligence takeaway. Brazil's official UFO night matters not because of any one's particular claim, but because the state openly admitted that its air defense system reacted to something it could not immediately classify. Now, let's talk about the press conference because this is one of the most important parts of the entire case. A few days after the incident, Brazil's Minister of the Air Force, Brigadier Octavio Morelia Lima, Lord, I hope I got that right, addressed the event publicly alongside the pilots. Later reporting quotes him as saying, in substance, that this was not a matter of belief, but of technical information, and that there was no explanation at that time. This is an extraordinary thing for an Air Force minister to say in public. This is why the case survives. Not because mystery alone keeps it alive, but because the mystery crossed into official language. And once that happens, the event moves into a different category. It becomes part of the national record. That gives us the second intelligence takeaway. The most powerful part of the Brazil case is the gap between operational seriousness and final explanation. The system reacted seriously, but no fully satisfying public closure ever took hold. Now, let's examine what the general UAP community often misses about this case. Many people talk about Brazil's official UFO night as if it were important, mainly because 21 UFOs invaded Brazilian airspace. That is the dramatic phrasing, but the deeper intelligence value is something else entirely. This case shows us what happens when a national detection and response system encounters something it cannot quickly classify. That means the real story is not just the objects, it is the system response. Radar detection, command alerting, interceptor launch, pilot testimony, later declassification, and incomplete closure. In other words, this is not just a UFO story, it is an air defense stress test. And that is why it belongs alongside the most important global government UAP cases. Now, could there be more ordinary explanations? Yes. Any serious analysis has to allow for that. Misidentification, unusual atmospheric effects, layered radar ambiguity, bright astronomical objects, and confusion in a complex airspace environment are all categories that must remain on the table. But the reason the case does not collapse into a simple debunk is that the event involved multiple observers, multiple systems, and military escalation in real time. That combination raises the threshold for dismissal. And that is where Brazil's case becomes globally significant. Compared to many US or UK files where the public often receives heavily filtered summaries years later, Brazil's record stands out because the government itself has been unusually open in acknowledging the event as real and unresolved. A major 2023 Washington Post report on Brazil's UFO archives noted that the country has been comparatively transparent and that the 1986 incident remains one of its most important official cases. That gives us a third intelligence takeaway. Brazil's UFO night, or Brazil's official UFO night, is one of the clearest public examples in the world of a government admitting that unknown aerial events have triggered a real military response. Now step back and ask the bigger question. Why does this case still matter in 2026? Because it cuts through one of the worst habits in the UAP field. Too many stories rely on hidden evidence, anomalous briefings, and unverified secondhand claims. Brazil's 1986 case is different. This one has an official state summary, acknowledged radar involvement, acknowledged fighter activation, a public ministerial response, and a long afterlife in the documentary record. That does not make it solved. It does not make it extraterrestrial, but it does make it serious. And seriousness matters. Because if you want to understand the UAP problem at a government level, you need cases where the issue moved beyond rumor and forced institutions to act. Brazil did act. Its system lit up. Its pilots launched. Its officials spoke. And decades later, the file still refuses to close cleanly. So the cleanest summary of Brazil's official UFO night is this. A multi-object aerial event occurred over several Brazilian states in May 1986. The objects were reported by military and civilian witnesses, detected on radar, and serious enough to trigger interceptor response. Brazil later acknowledged the event publicly and did not provide a fully resolved explanation that ended the matter. And that is why this case matters, not because it is the loudest, but because it is one of the few times a modern nation seems to have said in effect, we saw it, we tracked it, we responded to it, and we still could not confidently classify it. This has been UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm Matt Tones. Thank you for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your mum about our podcast.